Thank you, everyone, for being here and sharing these moments together. All right, so we'll start with some ideas on the Lotus, and then we'll open to comments and questions by everyone, so we can uh, explore together the importance of this symbol. Probably, everything that I'm going to say, all of you probably heard it before. So the idea of the lotus per se, it's a representation of compassion and bliss. In ancient time, especially in the Vajrayana, every time you find the word bliss or ultimate bliss, it's always connected with bodhicitta, with Mahakaruna, the talk that you guys will have in a couple of weeks, ultimate compassion. So the lotus includes this idea of ultimate compassion, but also the idea of prajna, wisdom and compassion, indissolubly non-dual in the whole symbolism of the lotus. And one thing that everybody knows here, because Madame Blavatsky spoke about this, the lotus family, which you have the Buddha Amitabha, then you have Avalokiteshvara as the archetype, or Chenrezig in Tibetan, or Padmapani. HPB sometimes calls it Padmapani. You might find the name Padmapani in some of the teachings of HPB. And then the manifestation, the Manushi Buddha, it would be Padmasambhava. So you have these three, this trinity, again, of this lotus family, Amitabha, Avalokiteshvara, or Chenrezig, and Padmasambhava. As you well know, Amitabha sent out a ray, and from the ray that Amitabha sent out as the Dhyani Buddha, Chenrezig, or Avalokiteshvara, was born on the lotus. And it was the lotus born. And then from that, eventually you have the manifestation of all the great Manushi Buddhas like Padmasambhava. That means also born from a lotus. So the lotus is central as far as our understanding of esoteric ideas. Now, how can we use this ancient symbol nowadays? Can we bring this ancient symbol to the 21st century? Is there something that we can call from understanding this ancient symbol and practice nowadays? So yes, there are many things that us from the 21st century we can learn from this symbol. And I'm just going to present a few aspects, and then I'm sure that many of you probably have many more ideas, and together we can enrich the conversation together. So the symbol of the lotus helps us to understand, first of all, the elements. Each one of us is incarnated, and the cosmos too, in what we call the 5 elements. In theosophy, we have a septenary system. We say, the 7 elements. In Buddhism, depends. There could be 5, sometimes 6. In Kalachakra, you have a 6th element, which is the gnosis, jnana. So it depends on the system that we use. But usually we talk about these 5 elements, and the symbolism of the lotus integrates the 5 elements in a very profound way, because the seed of the lotus is in the ground. You'd say the mud, right? That represents the element earth. Then you have the stem rising in the element water. Then you have the flower opening up in the under the element fire, which is represented by the sun, but also the element air and space. So all the elements are presented in the lotus. So in the process of meditation, when we start looking at our mind, we start seeing how the five elements and understanding the five elements, which are represented and symbolized by the lotus, how important that is. Because you start with the element earth, the ground on which the seed is contained. And then you start looking at what is the ground in our mind. What the mind, the seeds that fall in our mental continuum, in what kind of continuum they fall. What's the quality of the ground in which the seed is placed? So that's the first thing that we can call from the symbolism of the lotus. When you're observing your mind, when you start to know who you are, trying to understand who we are and what's our place in the world and our relationships with everything that exists, with all sentient beings, our interdependence. And since the lotus, it's a representation of compassion and wisdom, then you apply the two to extract the vital energy of each of the elements and then integrate it in your daily life. So that's the process. One of the things that is very important in understanding the symbolism of the lotus is the capacity of extracting the vital energy that that symbolism is representing, and then bring that vital energy to bear in everything that we do. Complete integration. So we start again with the idea of the ground in which the seed is contained. And that ground, that element earth, in Tibetan and also in Sanskrit, they don't have the name element, just like we have. They usually call it a sphere of experience. So when we talk about the element earth, we're not talking about an element per se. Reify and objectify element. We're talking of a sphere in which we are experiencing solidity. That's the element earth. Everything that is solid pertains to the element earth. So you're experiencing that. You're experiencing that sphere of solidity. Now, you apply that to your mind, and then you start observing, when does my mind become very solid? When does my mind become not receptive? What is missing in this element that makes my mind impenetrable to compassion, to wisdom, etc., etc.? So that's the process of solidification from the negative, quote unquote, negative perspective. The other perspective of solidification, because each of the elements is bipolar, let's say, has two polarities. The other polarity of solidification is the capacity of sustaining. Something that is solid can sustain something else. And then you can observe that again within our mind and see, okay, when is the mind sustaining the practice that is helping along my spiritual path? What are the habits that are sustaining and they're not opposing? So that, to start, as far as the symbolism of the lotus, starting from the ground, from the element earth in which the lotus is emerging per se. And then we continue with what we call the element water. The element water is where the stem, of the lotus. And this element water, again, is the sphere of, let's say, experience of what is called cohesion. The element water brings up the cohesion of our experience. And then again, we start observing. It says, when is the mind cohesive and when is the mind fragmented? What are the causes that make the mind unify, cohesive, and what are the causes that make the mind fragmented, distracted, spread all over the place? So again, that's the process of the element water. And so you balance the elements in your process of meditation. If you discover that your mind has become too solid, then you introduce the element water to make the mind more fertile, more responsive. And that's what happens in the lotus. In the lotus, the 4 elements or 5 elements are completely in balance. They're completely balanced out. That's why we have this beautiful symbol of the lotus. And then if we keep going, then you have the element fire, which is the sun, which warms and allows for the flower of the lotus to open. So again, the element fire carries with it 2 polarities. A fire that can be very destructive, a fit of anger. There's an article by Judge, I think, on meditation. It says a profound fit of anger can really destroy the astral, affect the astral profoundly, so that you have to go back and rebuild it. It will be faster to do it, but still have to, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But the fire is also that which burns all the negativities and impurities. So that's the fire that allows for that beautiful flower to emerge. So the same thing with us. The fire of mind, the fire of wisdom, burning off the impurities that we carry within our mind. And then, of course, the element air, in which the flower of the lotus really thrives. And the element air is connected with motility, which means movement. Everything that is moving is sustained by the element air. And here, if somebody is serious meditator, which I'm not, and I'm not claiming anything here, but somebody that is a very good meditator, these are called in Sanskrit vayu or pranas. You start observing how the pranas or vayus are affecting your states of mind. Because in these ancient teachings, the mind and the pranas and the vayu work in tandem. The mind is the aspect of cognition, and the winds is the aspect of motility, of movement. That's why in a second we can project our mind to Mars. We can project our mind to China, wherever our imagination can take us. That aspect of motility are the winds on which the mind travels. So you could say that the winds are the horse and the mind is the jockey, is the rider of the horse. So, and here it's exactly how the person that is using the symbology of the lotus as an aid to know himself or herself, it extracts the vital energy of the air element. And then using the element earth, for instance, you stabilize it. The air tends to be very mobile. That's why it's very hard for us to concentrate and to meditate. So the idea is to be able to stabilize the winds, and you stabilize the winds by an interaction with the element earth, which bring that stability. And then we finish with the element space. Element space is the idea of omnipresence. Omnipresence. And that is exactly the culmination of our meditation, in a sense, since the lotus represent compassion. Compassion implies the complete dissolution of any barrier between self and others. Everything that constitutes a barrier between self and others, it's being dissolved through the process of the fire of wisdom, ignited by the element air that sustains that fire, just like in a physical fire, the same thing. But now we're talking inner fire and inner element air, and that space, that omnipresence, in which the barriers have been removed. And that's the manifestation of compassion in all the different aspects in daily life. So now you have a being that is very, very well-rounded, a being that is a force for good. So wherever the being goes, it's an emanation of wisdom and compassion, in a sense. And that it's contained in this symbolism of the lotus, going through all the different stages of the lotus and all the different stages connected with the elements. Because the elements are the ground of everything that is manifested. And we're just barely touching the surface, because you have the outer elements, the inner elements, and the secret elements. Just as we have the outer lotus, inner lotus, and secret lotus, as far as symbology. So we can take this at very, 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 very deep levels of realization, depending of each student, how far we want to go into this investigation. And we can go as deep as we want also in our conversation through questions and ideas. We can tap into more deeper aspects of what we're talking about. But one thing that it's very important to look also how the symbolism of the lotus represents, in a sense, now we're talking about the inner lotus, right? The symbolism of the inner lotus. And the symbolism of the inner lotus represents the central channel of the human. Again, if you are a meditator and you try to realize ultimate reality within yourself to be the better able to help others, then you start seeing, you become familiar that there is a subtle platform that can be developed. And the lotus, the stem of the lotus, that thin stem represents exactly the inner central channel. Some people call it Sushumna or Avaduti. It depends on the systems that people study. But that central channel is where you bring these values through meditation. You bring these pranas in the central channel, and then you dissolve them there, and you uncover what they're called wisdom channels, the wisdom value, the jnana value, the wisdom winds. And the wisdom winds will manifest in us as that beautiful flower. The external flower will be actually the manifestation of our mind now being completely healed. The mind is being completely healed from self-grasping, ahankara, the sense of I, the separation, I and mine, I and mine, I and mine. So that is the symbolism of the inner lotus. And if you want to go to the secret lotus, the symbolism of the secret lotus, I'm barely touching the surface here again, but we don't have a lot of time, and then we want everybody to participate. If you go into the secret aspect of the lotus, then you have the manifestation of the three kayas. You at the ground, you have the Dharmakaya as the seed from which all the kayas manifest. It's the potential. Sometimes it's called the inner radiance, that inner potentiality. Everything is in a state of readiness, but it's not manifested. It's that inner radiance. And then that inner radiance will manifest through the stem of the lotus as the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya will be represented by the stem of the lotus. And then the Nirmanakaya would be the flower per se. So again, in the secret aspect of the lotus, you have the three kayas manifesting in unison, in perfect harmony. And then before I end, I think it would be good to have a look at the text that I picked for today. Okay, this text is extremely profound, and of course, I'm not up to par to be able to explain it, or I'm not qualified for anything like that. Usually, the great teachers. But the reason why I picked it, because it's extremely profound, and to even have a small karmic connection with a text of this magnitude, even if I cannot explain it, and maybe it's difficult to understand, but to make a karmic connection with a text like this is already a great opportunity. Since you came this Saturday and shared time with me, I figured that my words don't count much, but something like this, it's a real pearl that if somebody can meditate on it and really treasure, extract the vital energy of the words of the great teacher, it will be extremely beneficial. So all of you are familiar with the Om Mani Padme Hum. It's the famous, Tibetan formula. H.P. Blavatsky talks about it very much. And it's a very important mantra. And there's so many explanations that people can give to the Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm just going to give one point of view. And then again, we can explore many more options. But I'm going to take it from the reading here, because it's connected again with the idea, the symbolism of the lotus. When we understand the true natures of our bodies, and here for theosophists, this would be easy to understand, because bodies, you can even look at it as the septenary constitution of the sentient being, right? The different bodies, the different principles in our nature. When we understand the true natures of our bodies, well, we seize the border area between emptiness and clarity. So this one is extremely profound already. Emptiness and clarity. Here is giving us two techniques. One is called the samadhi of emptiness, and the other one is called the samadhi of clarity, or samadhi, or self-illuminating samadhi. So it's trying to make us understand that, and we go back this we can go back to the elements. Madame Blavatsky, when she talks about the elements, sometimes she uses the word critical stage or critical state. The critical state is a state in which liquid water becomes ice, or ice becomes liquid. So there is a moment that is critical in which this change occurs. And this is what occurs here. The border area between emptiness and clarity is the critical state that the meditator discovers, and is a critical state in which the meditator has an insight in when the mind is going from a state of just emptiness and in a state of clarity, indissolubly non-dual. So that's why they're called the samadhi of suchness or emptiness, and the samadhi of illumination, self-illuminating samadhi. And these two lines correspond to the letter Om, O-M, or A-U-M. It depends if you want to see it 2 or 3. If you want to see as 3, it will represent the 3 kayas. If you want to see it as 2, it will represent these 2 samadhis, emptiness and clarity, O and M. The O representing the samadhi of emptiness, and the M representing the samadhi of clarity. And that is exactly what occurs in the symbolism of the lotus when we go from the seed, which is in the ground, to the stem that is in the water. To be able to understand, even in daily life, to be able to understand the critical stage that we can go through from moment to moment. In that critical moment, that border area between emptiness and clarity, or you can say the border area between reality and its nature, that is extremely important. Because that is like prajna. Prajna, all of you are familiar with it because we have prajna paramita, and then in the voice of the silence, when she talks about the prajna, the 7 paramita is called prajna, right? Prajna paramita in the voice of the silence. So when you apply prajna, which is discerning wisdom, right? Incisive wisdom, then prajna has nature and dynamic strength. That's the same thing with emptiness. The emptiness is the nature, and the clarity is the dynamic strength. So if we can understand within ourselves this Om, the nature and the dynamic strength, inside of us there is the ultimate nature, the nature of our being, which is primordial awareness. But this primordial awareness is not something dead or static. Primordial awareness has a profound dynamic energy. And that is the clarity. And that is the source of all our creativity. So that is the idea of the Om. And that represents the ground from which the lotus will arise. Then the next 2 sentences corresponds to money. Money. When we understand our essence, we're pure within emptiness. Money. Money from manas, mind. In this case, since we're talking about this sacred formula, Om Mani, Mani refers to bodhicitta, refers to the mind of enlightenment, of infinite altruism. So that's the essence that we're trying to understand. To understand our essence, we're pure within emptiness, meaning that we're pure with no concepts obscuring our perceptions. Our perception are direct perception of reality, unencumbered by all the conceptual framework that covers it up. And that's when we understand our essence. And we understand that we've been pure from the get-go. We've always been pure. But we think we're not. We think we're impure. We think we have a lot of karma because our light has been completely covered up. Covered up what we call the Buddha nature, the self, the higher self, has been completely covered up by what they call the 5 poisons, or sometimes there are 84,000 poisons. I mean, the number, it doesn't matter, but it's the covering that doesn't permit the manifestation of our ultimate nature. So by understanding our essence, we're pure within emptiness. So you have Om Mani. So Mani now is realizing our essence. Our essence is bodhicitta, is wisdom and compassion. Compassion is at the basis. I think there's an article by William Q. Judge that says brotherhood is a fact in nature. So compassion is a fact in nature, is the reality of everything that exists. Then he goes on and says, when we understand our experience, we give birth to the non-conceptual. And that's Om Mani Padme. So we come back to the lotus, Padme. But here, the lotus represents the non-conceptual realization of our experience. When we understand our experience, when we really penetrate the core of what it means to be alive and to experience, at that moment, we give birth to non-conceptual. Meaning, at that moment, we uncover the ultimate nature of our mind. And our ultimate nature is non-conceptual. And that's the Padme. That's the beautiful lotus. And then finally, when we understand the Great Spirit, we cut through the roots of samsara's 3 rounds. So Om Mani Padme Hum, the last 3 lines, Hum is the Great Spirit that resides in our heart. That Great Spirit has been, let's say, activated. That radiance now is coming up through the process of transformation that we're going through. And that radiance cuts through the roots. And that's very important. Roots, meaning cuts through the causes of samsara. You know, the causes, you know, the famous page 200 of the Secret Doctrine, which is the whole display of samsara from the first logos to where we are. By understanding the Great Spirit, by understanding what's the white page before the diagram is drawn. The diagram is drawn on a white page. That white page is the Great Spirit. And if you understand the Great Spirit, then you can cut the roots of samsara 3 rounds. You can cut the roots of the desire round, the rupa, the archetypal, and then the arupa rounds. All of them, in a sense, become absorbed into the ultimate nature that resides in our heart, in the heart of all sentient beings. So in a sense, this jewel maker, the great tantra of the consequence of sound, in this few lines, give us the whole process of how to unfold, it kind of rolling the carpet back. In theosophy, we say involution and evolution, right? So this would be the process through which we come back home, quote unquote home, right? We found a way through our own practices that will help us to uncover our ultimate nature. So that is not something that we just talk about or we read about it. It becomes a direct experience. It becomes something that I can practice daily and connect with it. And that brings that beautiful mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, into our life, start integrating it into our life. through understanding, as he says here, when we understand, when we understand, when we understand, when we understand. Okay, it's not conceptual understanding. This one is the self-radiance of prajna. That's what allows us for us to understand this level of teachings. It's not a conceptual, highly intellectual mind. The understanding that he talks about here, in theosophical terminology, you would say is more of a buddhi manasic understanding, is that self-radiance of prajna that arises spontaneously from the heart of the practitioner that has been, practiced, studied, and contemplated. So in a sense, you have these steps, study, to contemplate, to meditate, and then discerning wisdom. These 4 steps are part of the nature, they're part of the dynamic strength of prajna. And the nature of prajna is that self-radiance. So you find that, again, these 4 steps, you can compare them to the 4 elements. You can draw a correspondence with the 4 elements in the Lotus. The idea of study, contemplating, meditating, discerning awareness, and then the self-luminosity of prajna arising. So those are a few ideas that I can share with you on this. Nothing that I said is conclusive. They're just, points of view, little insights through the study that I've done and the people that I studied with. We can definitely widen the subject much more. We can go deeper according to your questions, if you have more comments or ideas. But I think now it's a good time to open it to the comments, the question, the doubts, something you don't agree with, whatever, maybe I made some mistakes. So I'm going to stop sharing. Should I stop sharing, Jonathan?
Could you leave the up here just one more?
Yeah. I'll leave it. I'll leave the text on then. Okay.
Well, I was just gonna ask a question based on the text, if it's okay with you.
Please, any question is welcome.
So first of all, you said that you weren't really qualified to explain this. You did a wonderful job, I think, but maybe I'm not qualified to assess if you did a good job. But no, it was quite magnificent. We have we understand the true natures of our bodies well, so that could apply to all the principles. I think you mentioned that. And then the border area, which would be like the critical states, you could say. But what I wanted to ask about was the emptiness. And then you even referred to that this whole subject does pertain to the Mahakarana. So the Dalai Lama has said in some of his writings that he's kind of spent his whole life thinking about the relationship between shunyata and karana, really. And the emptiness seems to imply that there's nothing that really stands alone out of relation to everything else. And so therefore, because of that, you have interdependence, and because of the interdependence, you have the compassion. And I was just wondering, and then if you could tie that in with understanding our true natures as well.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Yeah, great. There is a line from Nagarjuna that says, Shunyata Karuna Garbha. And what it means is emptiness is the womb of compassion.
Mm.
So that's what Nagarjuna says. Why is emptiness? Because we have to understand emptiness correctly, right? Because many people think of emptiness as nothingness, and they go on to the extreme of nihilism. Oh, nothing, everything is empty, nothing exists, so whatever I do doesn't matter. that's not the idea. Emptiness is exactly the middle path. You bring in the two extremes, eternalism and nihilism. You bring the two extremes into perfect balance. And that's the idea of emptiness. As you well explained, nothing has inherent existence. So everything is interdependent. Everything being interdependent implies that compassion is a fact in nature, as Judge says. So that's why the idea of compassion and wisdom always intertwine. And the understanding, that's why it's called bodhicitta. In a sense, you could say in theosophy, buddhimanas, right? So the bodhicitta is that intelligent, profound intelligence, but also imbued in what they call it immeasurable love. That immeasurable love. That's why they talked about the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. So bodhicitta is that culmination of this four immeasurable, but carries with it also the mind of enlightenment. There's also wisdom with it. So that's why we understand. The four understandings is underlining the importance of prajna, of wisdom. In that's why we have prajna paramita, thousands and thousands of verses, extremely important. So I don't know if that helps, Jonathan, but I will go along with what you just said.
Well, that's a beautiful answer, and you gave me something to think about for a few lifetimes there with the shunyata being the womb of compassion. That's
Yeah.
really, really something.
Yeah, and to boot, there is another great Kagyu that gave me a lot to think about. A great Kagyu yogi that said that karma is the radiance of emptiness. So that one makes you think.
Wow, there's another
Yes,
one.
yes, because we usually think of karma just on our level, right? Action and reaction.
Mhm.
Just like that.
Mechanically.
But
Yeah.
if you take karma to its ultimate nature, is actually radiant.
Wow.
It's the radiance of emptiness. It's the radiance of emptiness, and at the ultimate level. But then, of course, then we our self-grasping, identification, I and mine. That radiance then becomes obscured
Hmm.
by all our skandhas and perceptions, etc., etc. So yeah. So those were two lines that are very useful. Those are my meditation lines a lot. Shunyata Karuna Garbha, and the other one, that karma is the radiance of emptiness.
Thank you. Do we should we keep the document up, or should we just talk to each other? Does anybody, let's put it this way, does anybody have a specific question with reference to this, the jewel maker?
And I have the text here in front of me too.
Yeah.
So we can take it down and somebody refer to it.
We got two raised hands here, and they are Judy first and David second.
Yes. Hello, Alex. A wonderful presentation, and very much to think about to try to get non-conceptual. I have a question about the early part of your talk. I think you said that Avalokiteshvara, who is the embodiment of compassion, and Shenrezi in Buddhism, the Dalai Lama being the current embodiment of that he was born of the lotus, which would indicate a purity of birth. And would this apply to the general idea of virgin birth in the different world traditions, Christianity, Buddhism, others, that it's the purity of the being born that is spoken of here rather than the idea of whether the usual natural sexual relation occurred. And that it also symbolizes the, as you pointed out, the ultimate purity in all of us that just needs to be rediscovered in meditation and study. Do you think that's the case of this symbolism of the lotus and birth?
I think there is a connection with it. I absolutely. Yes, definitely. That's very good. Very good. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, there is that. And the idea also that all the elements are in perfect harmony for that birth to occur.
Mhm.
So because the elements in their ultimate essence are the five Dhyani Buddhas. We experience them as physical elements because we see everything to our karmic glasses, right? Our perception. But if we go back to the ultimate nature of the elements, then you discover that they are the five Dhyani Buddhas. So when these five elements are in complete harmony, then yes, it's that manifestation, of purity. Of purity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alex, would it be possible to tilt your laptop a little different or your camera? There you
Yes.
go. Thank you.
Unfortunately, yes, it moves down a little bit. Thank
No
you.
problem. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. David, go for it.
Oh, sorry about that. When you were describing the process of the lotus at the beginning, different processes, and then on your chart talking about clarity, emptiness, and clarity, I couldn't help but think of the famous lines of William Blake, which I'll read. And I'm wondering if he was, when he wrote this, sort of on the border, as you put it in your lines, when he says, to see the world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Can you elaborate on that? You think he's in that?
Yeah.
Is that an expression of
I think so.
that transcendental place?
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. You see, it shows the universality of these teachings that just don't belong to Tibet or China or India. They belong to humanity. And through the ages, many humans, through all the different places in the world, have tapped into the same source. And they've had these experiences of transcendence. So Blake, and then you can take a Kabbalist, you can take a Sufi, you can take some great shamans, in South America, in Africa. And then when they tell you about the inner experiences of the world that they have, they're extremely similar.
Mm-hmm.
The differences usually are when we codify things in schools. Then you say, my school is better than your school, or my teacher is, the human then codifies things. And then we start having all these debates, But if you go to the pure, straight, direct experience of the yogis, they all converge. There's really not a lot of dissonance, because they all tap into this H2O.
Mm.
So yes, some water can be lemon, some water can be strawberry, some water can be, orange, but they're all H2O. So each yogi then tries to bring the experience and to the flavor of the people they're in. So that some people might like orange water, and that's what they get, because that's what they need. The yogis always work for the benefit of the students. But the yogi never forgets that behind all the different flavors, there's always that H2O.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think what you just read is the H2O from a poet, of the Western tradition. He tapped into that H2O. I suppose. I could be totally wrong, of course, but
Yeah, I kind of felt that way too. It's in that realm anyway, like you're saying, right?
yeah. That's the beauty of especially the study of theosophy, when the teacher gave the three objects. In a sense, they gave the three trainings that the Buddha gave. Because the first object is ethics. So it's forming a nucleus of universal brotherhood. So it's high ethics. The second object is wisdom, because it's the comparative study of all the religions and sciences. So that develops the wisdom. And then the third one is actually knowing the mind, because this powers, the hidden powers in nature, are actually the powers of the mind. So you have the three trainings. You have ethics, wisdom, and then meditation. Dhyana in the third object. At least that's one way to look at it. I'm not saying, again, definitive like that, but that's one point of view. Monica, you have the floor.
Actually, no, I don't. It's Dr. Saltzman was next.
No,
Oh,
I'm finished.
Oh,
I'm just
Judy's
Judy.
done.
Okay.
No, I'm finished.
Okay.
Yours, Monica.
All right. Thank you. Well, first of all, this was a wonderful presentation. I appreciate it so much. And I particularly love the way you broke down Om Mani Padme Hum for us. That was so great. Thank you. But I had a question about when you were describing the elements, the element of air, and you used the jockey as an analogy. And I somehow missed it trying to write notes. Forgive me. Could you explain it again?
Gladly. Yes. So the element air in Sanskrit, sometimes you read Vayu. You'll find it in the Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna complains to Krishna, says the mind is impossible to control. It's like the wind. Okay, so that's the idea of Vayu, the air, and the characteristics is movement, constant movement. So the air is the horse, and the mind is the jockey on the horse. So when the horse is totally unbridled, the mind gets carried away by the winds. And that's what happens to most of us when we die. When we die, these karmic winds, the karmic propensities that we have, are going to determine where we're going to be born, because it's the karma that determines where we're going to be born. Unless you become a Jivan Mukta, or a great bodhisattva, an enlightened being, somebody that is free of karmic tendencies in this life, and then you can choose. There is a choice. You're not subject to the karmic winds when you die. You're subject to what they call the wisdom winds. That is prajna. That's the clarity of prajna. And at that level, then the being can choose where to incarnate, where it can better help the sentient beings. They're great teachers that decide to incarnate in what they call the hell realms, the Avicii, to help all the beings in the Avicii. Yeah, but these are great beings moved by immense compassion, but also they have developed such a profound understanding of emptiness. So even if they go into Avicii, they don't reify, they don't concretize it. For them, Avicii has no inherent existence. So they wouldn't be affected by it like somebody else that grasp onto it and thinks it's real. So yes, so these karmic winds are extremely, extremely important to understand and to be able to discipline them, you know, to gain mastery over them. Because in a sense are the reins, right? The mind is the jockey, the winds are the horse, but our discipline, let's say meditation, concentration, whatever practice we have, those are the reins that can bring the horse under control. And then the jockey decides where the horse goes.
It's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Nothing of this is mine, right? It was told to me. It was taught to me. I just share it.
Thank
But,
you.
of course, yes. Happy to. Happy to.
Alex, could I ask a question?
Please, Jonathan, go for it.
Okay. You just now did something very intriguing where you did ethics is the first object, and the third object, I spaced out on the second one, so help me out with it. But the third had to do with the mind and the powers of the mind. And so what did you say about the second?
Wisdom.
Okay. So there's a kind of a obscure article by Bertrand Keightley where he talks about the second and the third object are the whole key to the first object. And I was wondering if you could talk about that, where you have the wisdom and then understanding the powers of the mind in relation to the ethics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful, Jonathan. That's a great point. Because in a sense, you could say why do we study the different traditions? Because they help us to break down the barriers. So that you start understanding how other society, how our culture understand ideas. So that helps to break down the barrier. And by breaking down the barrier, your meditation is going to be more stable. Why is our meditation not stable? Because usually it's marred by I and mine barriers, the grasping, the identification. So the study, that's why in the text that we just said, we just read, was saying understand. And how do you understand? You understand through study, contemplation, and meditation. So you integrate the three. So through study, then the meditation is improved. When the meditation is improved and the mind is more, let's say, reliable or responsive, then compassion or ethics, it's easier to apply. Then ethics, on its turn, pays you back a favor and allows you to go deeper into your wisdom in your study. And then wisdom will sustain the meditation. Meditation will sustain ethics. So it becomes this synergy of the three objects in daily life, in a sense.
Yeah.
You bring the three objects into integration in daily life. So the ethics will fortify your study of wisdom. The study of wisdom will fortify your meditation. And your meditation will make your ethics even more effective. Because now wherever you go, you're going to bring a mind that is very well trained. So if you are a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you are a lawyer, if you are somebody that cleans the streets, whatever job you have, you're going to bring to that job now a mind that is very healthy. Instead of bringing a mind that is flip-flopping all over the place. Sometimes angry, sometimes lusty, sometimes this, sometimes that, all over the place. So that flip-flopping mind becomes more cohesive.
Yeah, it becomes a worthy instrument, right?
Very good, Jonathan. Very good, yes.
Are there any more questions? We've got maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. You can raise your hand or just jump in there. And do you mind moving the camera again? Sorry.
Yes, I'll be happy to. Yes. It's the big screen of the computer that for some reason tilts backward.
It's
And
like
it cuts my forehead.
remember what Judd says about you have to aim a little high with the arrows. You know. Actually, I got the same problem. I got to move mine. So yeah, it's universal.
It's universal. Yes.
The gravity problem.
Yeah, I have a question, but give me a moment to pull over.
Oh goodness. You're not supposed to confess that you're driving when you do these things. So.
Well, he's pulling over. He's pulling over, so that's good already.
There you go. That's a step in the right. I think that sounds like something I would do. Well, while he's getting set up, I just want to express my thanks for such a clear and clarion, crystalline presentation. So, no, but it's just very educational too, in terms of the structure of unpacking the jewel in the lotus mantram, right?
Yeah.
And just what you did with the three kayas and the emptiness with the clarity, and just working with these fundamental numbers, relationships, you know, twos and threes and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot to think about. And oh, Truth, go ahead. He's trying to.
My reception is not good. Kind of losing it. It's breaking up. Can you hear me?
Beautifully. Yes. Very clear.
Oh, great. So I was wondering, when I took a mythology class with a Professor White at UCSB on cosmogony, creation mythology, he said that one of the most common archetypes was called the Earth Diver myth. And so there are many variations of the Earth Diver myth around the world. And it's basically where there is like a hero who dives down into the water and finds something like a little piece of earth, something tangible, brings it back to the surface, and then it expands and becomes the world. So, I mean, I was wondering if like the jewel in the lotus is kind of like an earth diver myth without a protagonist. And I was also, my other question, is there a protagonist? Is there, like, other than just talking about the lotus itself, are there other characters involved?
Yes. Yes. There is the protagonist, and the protagonist is Avalokiteshvara, is the Buddha of compassion. And that's who we are. And that's us, because in a sense, we have come, let's say, on earth, according to theosophy, to help all sentient beings, to rise all the lives to a higher level of awareness. So the protagonist in the lotus, actually there are three. There is the ultimate protagonist, which is Amitabha Buddha, the Dhyani Buddha. Then you have Avalokiteshvara, which is the archetypal. And then you have Padmasambhava, you have the Manushi Buddha, the human Buddha that manifests through that symbology. And the Manushi Buddha draws from Amitabha and Avalokiteshvara. So the same thing with us. Let's say we are students of theosophy that we're trying to practice the teachings. So you draw from a lineage of inner masters, which are representative of Avalokiteshvara and Amitabha. So in a sense, you could say that Amitabha is the representation of Maha, Karuna, and wisdom as one. Then Avalokiteshvara is the representation of compassion as an archetype. And then Padmasambhava, or us, the human, is the manifestation of compassion through enlightened deeds, our daily life. We transform our daily life into something that is worth living, worth living. I don't know if that helps, but that's one way to look at it.
David?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It reminded me so much of, Joseph Campbell's concept of the monomyth.
Yeah. Yes.
And his groundbreaking early book, Hero with 1,000 Faces. That's all of us.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this, of what we're studying. Everything is about who we are. So we have all these strange names, Amitabha, Avalokiteshvara, but actually what they're talking about aspects of our nature that we are about to uncover through the study, the practice, the meditation, etc., etc. So through the different, the path that each one of us is on, will uncover. And that's the beauty of it. We are uncovering that reality. You don't have to create that reality. You don't become that reality. You are that already from the get-go. You just uncover it. You remove that which covers it up. And that's a beautiful way to look at the human evolutionary scheme. You know. At least that's one idea.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. That was great. I'm glad that you brought it up. I knew that through the conversation together, we will dig deeper into the symbolism, because each one is going to bring something to the table that I don't know, By working together, more minds thinking on the same subject, we can go much deeper than just one speaker.
Do you find it amazing that at this time, we'll say it's 2022, that there's so many remarkable teachers and practitioners and meditators that are making a lot of this stuff kind of accessible?
Yes. It's a very special time that we're in. We, at least as far as written history, we never had so much at our disposal. Nowadays, so many things available for the serious student. The fact that you have incredible amount of these ancient teachings on the internet at our fingertips. Only 20 years ago, we had to go to India, to some dusty library, or travel to Tibet and discover some crypts in which the teachings were kept. So we're very, very fortunate, actually. Yes. Yeah.
I thank you so much for putting this together and for having meditated on these things for a few decades here, and sharing with us the benefit of that. So I thank you very much for your kindness and your generosity.
Oh, glad, very glad to be able to share. Yes. And as I said, make some karmic connection with the text that I brought in. It's extremely important, because those are seeds. They're going to be left in our continuum. You never know when they're going to sprout, but they're there. The connection was made. Yeah.
That's in the flyer that we sent out. So you have that.
Yes.
And next week, we will be considering a very profound metaphysical idea of Nitya Pralaya. We thought that it was we had Pralaya and then Manvantara and then Pralaya again, like cycles. Well, it turns out there's Nitya Pralaya. What's going on with that? In other words, there's ceaseless Pralaya, and there's ceaseless Svarga, which is ceaseless creation. It's always going. So And there's a lot that can be done with that and explored through that idea. So, and in these times of incredible change, to be thinking about that which is that which actually is permanent within us, which is the alaya within, as it says in the voice of the silence. And all these are connected. And then after that, Mahakarna. So it's quite a series that we're embarked on, this journey of the Aquarian Almanac. So thank you all very much. And thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. Very happy to be able to be of service.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye, bye, bye.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Well, and States. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jonathan.
so much. That was amazing.
Thank you, Alex. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan, and your crew for doing this every week. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You should see the stuff that Truth pulls off. He's the
No,
he's the calm center in the middle of the hurricane. So
well, thank you, Truth, too.
take care, everybody.